Okay, this is just absolute madness. Elon Musk uncovers an absolute Bitcoin bombshell. He's really cleaning house with the Department of Government Efficiency in the US, saying that there will be a balanced budget this year. This is also particularly important for Bitcoin. Moreover, he's really cleaning up here alongside Donald Trump, uncovering a ton of fraud. This is now coming to light. Taxpayer money is being massively and systematically wasted. Additionally, we have a massive statement from Scott Bessent talking about how 10-year Treasury yields are going to continue to fall. This is also highly explosive for Bitcoin because Bitcoin is simply linked to global liquidity to the US dollar, to the strength of the US dollar. And what's going on here in the USA, on the one hand here at the Treasury Department, how they want to lower the interest rates here on the 10-year bonds as well. Donald Trump, Elon Musk may also want to strengthen the dollar by changing the budget here. Balancing the budget is also very, very relevant for Bitcoin. So we have a lot of things coming together here that we need to sort out, which could really be a game changer for Bitcoin. But let's start with Elon Musk. He actually just tweeted a few hours ago, balanced budget is going to happen. And the Democrats, the leftists and the two administrations and so on, are freaking out. Donald Trump confirms this again and says, balanced budget, it's going to happen. And of course, it would be crazy if Elon Musk actually exposed the tax waste here. Here, things are being uncovered, like how money is flowing to George Soros and all these, cloud seeding missions, and who knows where else the money is going. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Here we have Ukraine funding, Viktor Orban, New York Times, Politico, and so on. We're going to go through the whole list right now, BBC and so on. All the magazines, all the big players, they're all being greased. And this is all supposed to come to an end now. And in the end, we'll also touch on how this all ties in with Bitcoin and why these are significant events for Bitcoin. Donald Trump is basically saying something brand new here. Just a few hours ago, he dropped this. USAID, however you want to pronounce it, is driving the radical left insane. And there's nothing they can do about it because the way the money is being spent is so fraudulent, completely inexplicable. The corruption is at a level that has rarely been seen before. So does that mean it's closing down in the end? A whole lot of things are coming to light now. And now check out what the crypto guru David Sacks has to say about this, about the whole waste fest that's going on here. That's just mind-blowing.
Okay, so we knew the U.S. government runs a $2 trillion deficit every year. We're in debt almost $40 trillion. And we also knew that anytime anyone tries to cut anything in Washington, the whole city screams bloody murder. Okay, so the question is just why? Well, now we know. The money is all going to them. It's like round-tripping to them. New York Times, getting paid. Politico, getting paid. Bill Kristol, perennial warmonger, getting paid. Ukraine, getting paid. Like 11 out of 12 publications, Ukraine, getting paid.
Incredible.
Viktor Orban, who's the prime minister of Hungary, was saying that he's very popular in Hungary. His political opposition, funded by USAID. In Poland, the left-wing political opposition funded by USAID, and on and on and on it goes.
BBC. You wonder why everyone in the UK.
Paid.
So yeah.
Like
I couldn't believe the BBC is getting paid.
Every left-wing organization in the world seems to be getting paid by this slush fund at USAID, which disperses about $50 billion a year. That's $1 billion a week. That's actually a lot of money.
On one hand, I find it so disgusting what's going on here. But on the other hand, it's also pretty cool that all of this is coming to light. In the end, he is saying quite clearly, hey, it's no wonder that we have such a big deficit here, that we spend much more money than we earn. If we're just supporting all these leftist organizations, then fund some anti-freedom corruption fight or something like that. That means they'll fire against Bitcoin again, or against some liberal ideas, they'll fire against capitalism again, and say we need to go back to communism. And it's really, really crazy that the money is being thrown around like that. Without end, you run massive deficits here, you then have to print money again, you expropriate the people. And with that money, they fund anti-freedom campaigns. That they're brainwashing people even more into thinking that they need inflation, that a flexible money supply is good, that we need central banks and so on. So you really need to understand what kind of devil's spiral you're caught in. That means it's not just that money is being wasted, but that money is being used against your will and against your prosperity, against your best interests. I don't know how to put it, it's basically just being used against you. And that's what the Crypto Czar is uncovering here. And that's why he might be here, open to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is just a bit more transparent here. Elon Musk has already said he's open to blockchain and stuff like that. So that things like this don't happen anymore. I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. A lot more is probably going to come out in the next few weeks about how systematically the money is being thrown around here. There was even another interview that Elon Musk shared. Here, Antonio Garcias, he can't really do it, but in the end, he's uncovered how the government operates here. I'm not going to play the whole interview for you, that would take too long. But he's saying here, a treasury just asks the treasury for money, and then it sends it out. We all run businesses. There's a voting process, so you just clarify that. You can't just send money out in a company. Someone has to check it first, and so on. And in the US government, There's no voting process. This process is broken, and folks, if it's a US government, then it is. In Germany or in Europe, it's probably a lot worse or just as bad. That means we always have to be clear that what's happening here in the US is happening just the same in Brussels. And it's happening with the left-leaning politicians here in Europe, in Germany. They're just as bad off, only they don't send the money to George Soros or anything like that, but they use the money for bike paths in Peru. And then, I actually met someone here in El Salvador recently who said he saw the bike paths in Peru, but he didn't see any bikes and he didn't see any people riding on the bike paths. And that's how the money is basically just wasted. Then he goes on to say, the money is literally just flowing out like that. I've always wondered why the government's numbers are always wrong. You just have to press the button on the computer, and it's already clear. The problem is that button doesn't even exist. No one knows where the money is going. The government has an automated executive official stamp a bill, and then that bill is just paid. The Treasury Department receives an approved budget from Congress, and the Ministry of Finance then simply sends a payment notice to the Ministry of Finance to pay. There's no controller, so no one is checking the whole thing here. The money is just being thrown out. And like I said, it's probably no different in Germany or Europe. The reason it can't pass the test is that you can't pass something that you can't match up. So you can't test anything where, in the end, there's no tester. If you're not checking anything, you can't really determine anything is wrong, and so on. And that's basically the thing when you just throw money out there. There are review institutions that ultimately check whether the expenditure is justified or not. Then, of course, it is clear that the money is just being thrown out like that. And that's now coming to light. And Elon Musk is working very, very hard to ultimately expose the whole thing. And now it is also exciting that Elon Musk is now also reviewing spending at the Pentagon, for example. It's been reported that the US Pentagon has failed an audit for the 7th time in a row because it hasn't been able to account for its $824 billion budget. In recent years, the Pentagon has been unable to properly account for a whopping 36% of its $3.8 trillion in assets. And just think about it, if a private company were doing this, I'd say they'd be broke. Those companies would be locked up for tax evasion or tax cover-ups, or whatever, I guess. And this is just happening at the state level, at the government level. By default, that's just the normal state of things where you don't know where the money is going. It's totally normal to support some leftist positions here. It's totally normal to support some anti-freedom campaigns here. It's totally normal to just throw taxpayer money out the window. And I'll say it again, this isn't just happening in the US, it's pretty much everywhere where bureaucratic processes are taking over. I don't know if it's really that bad, or less so. It would be really interesting if we had a Dutch department here in Germany that could bring this to light, because if no one is looking into it, if no one is checking, then it can't come to the surface. And now something very, very interesting has happened here, which is really important in this context. The Department of Government Efficiency is basically there to strengthen the dollar and reduce government spending. If you have lower government spending, then you can balance the budget. Then you can strengthen the US dollar. Then you can also boost the demand for the US dollar again. That means you have a stronger dollar. On one hand, you could choose to have a stronger dollar. Or on the other hand, you could decide to print money. And then, of course, to funnel that money exactly to the organizations you want to support, or just flood the market and drive up the stocks, pump up the Bitcoin price. These are basically different scenarios that are now possible here. The US Treasury has met with Jerome Powell, the president of the Fed, which is the central bank in the U.S. Here, Scott Bassett basically said he can't say anything specific. Regarding financial policy and all that, he can't comment on it. That was in the first part of the interview. In the second part of the interview, he's going to talk about why he wants to drastically lower interest rates and how he plans to do that. He can't do it at the short end. He can only do it at the long end. The Fed is responsible for the short end. And here, the Treasury is responsible for the long end. And that also has to do with the Department of Government Efficiency. All of this affects government bonds and the attractiveness of the US dollar. But check out what Scott Bassett has to say here.
One of the things I wanted to emphasize is that we are not focused on whether the Fed is going to cut, not cut. What we are focused on is lowering rates. So we are less focused on the specific of rate cuts and how do we get the whole curve down. I mentioned that the 10-year, I believe, is the important price to focus on. It's mortgages, it's long-term capital formation. So, and look, I think with the president's policies of energy dominance, deregulation, and non-inflationary growth, I think that the 10-year is going to naturally come down.
This is now one of the most important statements. Ultimately, we need to understand that the 10-year government bond is ultimately the price of money globally. This is ultimately the most relevant government bond in the world. And he says here now, we don't care whether interest rates are lowered or raised. because that is Jerome Powell's job. It's really, really important, but they want to bring down the rates at the long end, meaning the 10-year government bonds. Bring those government bond yields down. And that will happen automatically as Donald Trump brings down energy prices here by basically making up stories like that. Like with the Department of Government Efficiency, making US government bonds more attractive. And when more people start buying US government bonds, the interest rates will automatically go down. That also means that the price of money is going down. And that also means that on one side, at the short end, the rates can also be lowered. Because right now we have the problem. We have too big of a spread. That means the short-term rates have gotten way out of whack compared to the long-term rates. That's why maybe not much can be cut down at the short end right now. Of course, there are also inflation issues. But we also have the issue that the spread is too high. If the 10-year government bonds come down according to the Treasury Department, that also means that the global price of money will get cheaper. Then, of course, more credit can be taken out. More money flowing into circulation means that asset prices can go back up. This is again good for Bitcoin and so on when interest rates are low here. And the US can also tend to take on new debt again, which means it can keep its Ponzi scheme going a bit longer. So the US dollar isn't going to crash into a wall anytime soon. Instead, it's going to be delayed a bit further down the line. And in all this chaos and, let's say, confusion that we have here, and I'm not even sure whether this is bullish or bearish for Bitcoin. I mean, you could argue that it's ultra bullish, of course. If the dollar hyperinflates, then Bitcoin would definitely skyrocket. But that might not be a healthy development. What's happening right now suggests that the US dollar is going to stick around for a while longer. If you just do something like a reorganization of the US dollar, like really taking a cash cut. But that also means, on the other hand, that if the EU does not do this, and if other countries do not follow suit, then the dollar will become massive. Compared to the currencies that are just blindly throwing money around and printing cash without a second thought, the dollar will appreciate against those currencies. That means the EU has a massive problem if they don't make sure to set up something similar to a Dutch team or something like that. I mean, you have to look at all of this. Whether that really takes effect or if these are just empty promises. But right now, things are really, really crazy here. And folks, if you're feeling bullish on Bitcoin right now, I'm going to drop a link down below for you. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. Here you can set up savings plans and limit orders. Here you can make one-time purchases, a ton of stuff for beginners, pros, and advanced users. No matter what level you're at, I absolutely recommend 21 Bitcoin. And here you can buy Bitcoin with the code. Save up to 20% on fees when buying Bitcoin. See you later. Peace.
Okay, das ist jetzt absoluter Wahnsinn. Elon Musk deckt eine absolute Bitcoin-Bombe auf. Er räumte mit dem Department of Government Efficiency in der USA so richtig auf, sagt, dass es dieses Jahr einen ausgeglichenen Haushalt geben wird. Das ist auch besonders wichtig für Bitcoin. Zudem räumt er hier zusammen mit Donald Trump richtig auf, deckt hier ganz, ganz viele Betrügereien, USAID und so weiter auf. Hier kommt jetzt ans Tageslicht, wie hier Taxpayer Money, also Steuergeld, massiv und systematisch verschwendet wird. Zusätzlich haben wir hier eine massive Aussage von Scott Bessent, der jetzt darüber spricht, wie hier die Zinsen der 10-jährigen Staatsanleihen weiter fallen werden. Das ist ebenfalls höchst brisant für Bitcoin, weil Bitcoin hängt ja einfach zusammen mit der globalen Liquidität, mit dem US-Dollar, mit der US-Dollar-Stärke. Und das, was hier in der USA abgeht, auf der einen Seite hier vom Finanzministerium, wie sie hier die Zinsen runter machen wollen, auf die 10-jährigen, zusätzlich wie hier Donald Trump, Elon Musk eventuell auch den Dollar stärken wollen, indem sie hier den Haushalt ausgleichen, ist ebenfalls sehr, sehr relevant für Bitcoin. Und dann haben wir hier noch David Sacks, den Crypto Czar hier in der USA, der ebenfalls aufdeckt, wie hier systematisch linke Leute und auch Mainstream-Medien hier von Steuergeldern finanziert würden. Und das Ganze soll jetzt ein Ende haben. Und dies ist ebenfalls relevant für Bitcoin. Also wir haben jetzt ganz, ganz viele Dinge, die hier zusammenkommen, die wir jetzt zusammen einordnen müssen, die hier für Bitcoin wirklich ein Gamechanger darstellen können. Wir fangen hier aber bei Elon Musk an. Er hat jetzt tatsächlich gerade vor wenigen Stunden getweetet, Balanced Budget is going to happen, also ein ausgeglichener Haushalt wird hier passieren und die Demokraten, also hier die linken Leute, die beiden Regierungen und so weiter, ist am Ausflippen. Donald Trump bestätigt das ja auch nochmal und sagt hier Balanced Budget, es wird passieren und das wäre natürlich schon crazy, wenn hier Donald Trump, Elon Musk tatsächlich hier die Steuerverschwendung im Endeffekt alles aufdeckt und alles hier viel, viel effizienter gestaltet. Und so sieht es ja wirklich aus. Hier werden Dinge aufgedeckt, wie hier irgendwelche Gelder an George Soros fließen und hier irgendwelche, wie sagt man, Cloud-Seeding-Missionen und was weiß ich, wo ja überall Geld hinfließt. Also ganz, ganz viele Dinge, die hier aufgedeckt werden. Aber das ist nur die Spitze vom Eisberg. Hier gibt es Ukraine-Finanzierung, Viktor Orban, New York Times, Politico und so weiter. Wir gehen die ganze Liste gleich durch, BBC und so weiter. Hier würden sämtliche Magazine, sämtlichen Big Player, alle geschmiert. Und das soll jetzt hier alles ein Ende haben. Und zum Schluss kommen wir dann, wie gesagt, auch noch darauf, wie das hier quasi mit Bitcoin zusammenhängt und warum das hier relevante Ereignisse für Bitcoin sind. Donald Trump sagt hier im Endeffekt ganz neu, auch hier vor wenigen Stunden haut er das raus, hier USAID oder USAID, wie man es halt hier aussprechen will, treibt die radikale Linke in den Wahnsinn und es gibt nichts, was sie dagegen tun können, weil die Art und Weise, wie das Geld ausgegeben wurde, so viel davon betrügerisch, völlig unerklärlich ist. Die Korruption ist auf einem Niveau, das selten zuvor gesehen wurde. Schließt es, also hier im Endeffekt USAID soll geschlossen werden, aber es soll noch viel, viel mehr geschlossen werden. Ganz, ganz viele Dinge, die im Endeffekt jetzt aufliegen. Und jetzt zieht euch mal hier rein, was hier der Crypto Czar David Sacks zu sagen hat zu der ganzen Verschwendungsorgie, die hier stattfindet. Das ist einfach der Oberhammer.